So please join me in welcoming Dr. Otero.
Thank you, Jim. Boy, when I hear that introduction, I kind of want to see who's coming up. Well, this is a great opportunity. Most of the time, my audience is healthcare, and I'm trying to convince very resistant doctors about why they should adopt this improvement methodology from a car manufacturing company to healthcare. And it's just brutal sometimes for me. So I'm glad to be in a different industry like education where everybody's receptive to change and there's no cultural barrier. The message should just fly through. I just got back this morning from a group that I was working with just outside the Bay Area. And so the topic we'll talk about and kind of the cultural issues and the methodology and the barriers that were very, very fresh in my mind here. I've been at Virginia Mason since 1997, so we had started adopting this method of the Toyota production system in 2002. So I was there kind of before in the old way, and then the journey and the transition of adopting a new methodology, and then now to see an organization that's 12 years into using a management method and improvement methodology. What's different about it when you have, as Deming says, constancy of purpose, continuous improvement for that period of time. The thing about our journey is it's a journey. It's been a journey. It's been a learning journey for our organization, but it is not anything that happened overnight. And I still wish, as I go out, people say, I want to accelerate the Virginia Mason journey into 2 years. Now, I see what you guys have done, but I think we can do it in 2 years. There is no app for cultural change. I keep looking at it each day. Search app, cultural change. It is a journey. It's not something that happens instantly. And it really, I think, as you all know, begins with leadership. So I just tell you, for those, I've met a couple of folks that are out of town. Virginia Mason, we're one of the hospital systems that's here in the city of Seattle. We are truly about a stone's throw away up the hill, up here about 4 blocks up the hill. We have a centralized hospital and satellite facilities, 9 satellites throughout the kind of Seattle, what we would say the Puget Sound area. Over 5,000 employees work in our system, and over 500 docs are part of the Virginia Mason system. We have educational functions, we have residency training programs, and we've applied this lean methodology and this improvement methodology to our education programs, our graduate medical education programs, within our own training at Virginia Mason. We started this journey in 2002 really out of a sense of urgency. And there continues to be urgencies in healthcare, and I'm sure you have all heard of them: costs, quality, safety. In 1999, we had a report come out, the Institute of Medicine report, that was called "To Err is Human." And it said that maybe 100,000 lives are lost each year in hospital systems because of medical errors. And I remember reading that and saying, God, I'd hate to go to that hospital. That's not our hospital. And I think as I learned more and more and tried to be skeptical, I realized it was our hospital, and it was pretty much every hospital, because it had very poor systems or ways of really understanding why it made errors or preventing errors. And I think it goes back to another Deming principle about how do we build inequality into what we do. And really in healthcare, we haven't built inequality into any step along the way, or a few steps. Virginia Mason had its own separate urgency aside from what was going on in the greater culture and environment in healthcare, and that we were financially losing money at the time as well, too. And so this led to calling a professional staff meeting with all 500 of us in some type of attendance. And our CEO, our newly elected CEO, Gary Kaplan, made this statement. He said, look, we're losing money. We aren't going to survive. There's quality concerns about what we've ever learned along the way in medical schools and residency training. We either got to do something differently or we aren't going to survive this morning. And I remember that meeting, this urgency that felt in kind of a sense of fear. And we all kind of said, okay, we changed, but what do you change to? What do you change to? What direction do you go? Does education have urgencies?
Not recently.
We have these urgencies, and we kind of know we need to move, but where do we move to? What do you move to? Where do you go? And I think for us, change was hard because really at a time the organization didn't have a vision of where it wanted to go. Everybody had a little bit of expectation. The physicians were aligned with one goal for themselves. The administrative group was aligned in a different way. The frontline workers wanted something else, and we weren't really in one common vision of what we were about as an organization or what we wanted from the organization or why we were there. Just cultural issues in medicine, I think, really prevented us from really moving forward. So there was a lot of these things that prevented us from knowing where we wanted to change. So creating the constancy of purpose for us began in 2002 when we created a strategic plan. What were we going to be as an organization moving forward? The nice thing about our strategic plan has been roughly, almost exactly the same for the last 12 years. And in our organization, almost anybody can tell you something about the strategic plan, specifically that the patient is the focus of everything we do. And it might be because it's been the screensaver on everybody's computer for the last 12 years. But people have seen it, and they know it, and our leaders talk about it all the time. And so they're continually connecting the dots about why we exist as an organization, what's most important to us. When this came out in 2002, though, we put the patient at the top of this pyramid, and our second line was to lead in quality. And we said, well, those are great things. We really are a patient-first organization. You know that in 2002. We all felt we were all about the patient. And the board challenged us and said, really, you're all about the patient? Because if you're all about the patient, then why does healthcare look the way it does at Virginia Mason? And we said, what do you mean by that? So look, we're patients at Virginia Mason as well, too. We make an appointment maybe 3 months in advance. You tell us to show up at 9:45 for the 10 o'clock appointment to start filling out paper. We show up at 9:45, you hand us something. Then 10 o'clock comes by and you tell us to wait over there, we're going to get to you. Because apparently 3 months wasn't enough to get ready. We just need a little more time. And then finally you get to us, you put us in a room, we go through rooming, and then you say that the doctor will be right in, and you wait. Yeah, you wait some more. And so then the doctor comes in, and you say, well, God, I'm really worried about this. And say, wow, we got to get a biopsy of that. That could be really bad. And so you go, oh, no, now I'm nervous. Yeah, I got it. So you go over and you make your appointment, and it's another wait to get the appointment, and then they do the biopsy and say, we'll get the results right to you, but they don't give you the results. And the truth was, none of this was about the patient. It was all about us. All the processes were built around us and when we were going to get to the patient. So this has been a big journey. And as I was talking with Jim, I was thinking about, what's the learner's experience or the student experience or the family experience? How do you keep that in focus as to what's that experience that you're trying to improve and taking the waste and making sure that the learner or the student's having the best experience along the way. So that's been a journey for us to go, what does it mean to be patient first? And I'm going to, later as we move through that, I'm going to show you where we're at now. I think the focus on the patient, as Toyota says the customer is first, as Deming would say a constancy of purpose, who's your customer all the time, is really going to change us, not today, but probably in the next 5-10 years. We're going to do really amazing things in healthcare because we're partnering now with patients in all of our improvement activities to tell us, what is it that you want? Where are we missing it? Where has it been about us where it needed to be around about you? So the thing about 2002 that we didn't have, we had the patient division. We didn't have this at the bottom, this thing called the Virginia Mason Production System. That's the Toyota production system applied to healthcare. So we had kind of a why we existed and what we wanted to be about, but we didn't have how we were going to achieve that. That's kind of the next part of our journey. When we went on when we started talking about being patient first, we knew that we had to take care of some old business that we had and old expectations between our business imperatives and what a lot of us had went into healthcare. It was really with docs. When I went into healthcare and I was trained by physicians who really said, hey, you know, we're going to make patients wait. That's what we do. You know, they can wait for us because, you know, it's great to see me as a doc. We believed about having autonomy. Great doctors were protected from anything. They were entitled to have patients. They were entitled to have staff. They're actually entitled to abuse staff in some situations. But these were kind of the expectations that a lot of docs signed up for. But then came these new imperatives in the health, you know, as a result. You know what? We actually have to be about quality and safety. We have to move towards a patient-first system of care. We have to be more about access. Patients actually don't want to wait. So we were being pushed by an administration that says these are the things we have to be, and we say we want to hold on to the way we were, the way we think about ourselves. Well, this is not going to lead, if this clash continues, it kind of gets resentment, discord, and lack of alignment. So we went in first, and I think Demi talks a lot about making sure that everybody is on board and knows what the purpose of the organization is. We had to align ourselves with what we would expect from a physician in our group and what the physician could expect from our organization. And so we went through this process of calling a compact. These aren't rules and regulations. They aren't your bylaws. They're just kind of these informal agreements of how we're going to behave with each other. Our compact. So we have a compact for our providers. We also have a compact for our leaders. And we have a compact for our board members about what does it mean to be a board member and what does the organization owe you to be the best board member. For me as a physician, I remember when this came out, I was the head of oncology at the time. And we had multiple discussions about the compact, and it really had said things such as, we will adopt standards of care when standards of care come out. We will participate in improvement events. And we're saying, really? Do we have to? And it was really that time to have our dialogue about were we going to hold on to where we were, or how are we going to begin changing and being able to participate changing the organization. Do compacts exist in education, or what's? What would be an example of a?
Title I, it's required under the SEA that Title I school has to have a compact with parents and then students, and it has to be their commitment to.
We have a military compact for children who go to different installation schools and so forth. It spans the nation. It's a voluntary agreement that we all enter into to honor certain practices in other school districts when kids are transferring because of parents moving.
Yeah. So, and are there areas where you don't have compacts? Or
everything else.
Yeah. Well, it's very good because we didn't have that. We kind of had these expectations, and this was really good about being clear about what the expectations we had for each other in the organization.
These are compacts around different people's roles here,
yes,
as opposed to different functions.
Right. And so we don't have a staff compact, and we stayed away from the staff compact early because we were worried about the union, about whether we could really call out behaviors and expect without getting into a negotiation of what we could put in. But I will tell you that our experience in working with unions We have a nursing union that is in our hospital system. Has been pretty positive. I'll give you one experience that wasn't, but it's been pretty positive as long as we're framing it about improving work and improving quality and safety. And as long as we're not changing job titles and things that would affect compensation along the way. As long as we're focusing on improving an outcome of quality and safety or service, we seem to do okay. They seem to be very supportive of that. I think we could go out and do a staff compact as well too. The only compact that's ever changed, there's one line in our leader compact that we had to change as we learned more and more about the Toyota organization. We used to have that leaders will be great problem solvers. Great problem solvers. Do anybody know what you might change that to in a lean organization or an organization that's trying to get people to come up with ideas?
Great problem creators.
Creators?
Wait, problem identifiers?
Identifiers, yes. Yeah. Problem framers is what we
Yeah,
changed
yeah,
to there.
yeah.
That it isn't about solving the problem as a leader. It's about framing the problem so people can come up with the ideas to solve the problems themselves. And that's the cultural change we needed to go with through leaders. Is that, hey, it was great you solved that problem, but let your people have an opportunity to solve it. Tee it up for them. So one of my colleagues says, leaders are gallery owners. You know, they frame everything. They frame the problem and they make it look nice, and then you get to come and comment on it and give you a great idea. The other direction we need to go and is really defining what it means to be quality. What was it going to be a quality leader? And we came up with this, but for healthcare, it's very relative that we do appropriate care, not inappropriate care. We have good outcomes in service. But this was our big next thing that we need to do with the least amount of waste. That we can't waste our resources. That when we look at how we provided a service, we might say the customer was completely satisfied and the outcome was good, but we expended so much resource in it that we need to come back and look at it and see where can we take the waste out of the system? How do we think about it? How do we think about waste and keep it in the front of all of our work that we do? Now there's lots of waste in healthcare. I don't know if there's waste in education. Generally there are opportunities, but when I say there's waste if you were to say, oh, there's waste in healthcare, do you have a framework for looking at it? Do you have what are the wastes that you're looking for? What are the kinds of things that are common? Do you know how to go out and observe the process by which any educational product is delivered and identify where there's waste in that system? And those are the kind of skills that we need to develop. Okay, so armed with, now I haven't talked anything about Toyota or quality, because I think very critical, this is the groundwork before going into a new methodology. I go to a lot of organizations that adopt a new improvement methodology every 3 years because the last one didn't work. Yeah. Okay, TQM, lean. I read their book and I want lean. Go get lean over here because TQM didn't work. And I go into those organizations, they have no vision, they have no alignment, they have no strategy, they have no definition of quality, and so it's changing your improvement method isn't going to do it. You need these things. You also need leadership alignment along the way. So this is kind of the groundwork. So the groundwork is done. And now we're kind of moving on, where do we want to go to look to manage and improve our work? By what methodology? So we looked through healthcare, went to Mayo Clinic, went to Hopkins, and then we looked in our backyard with Boeing. And Boeing was using the Toyota production system. So we started working with one of the consultants there. We started doing some improvement workshops in healthcare where we would map out the process. And then we said, you know what, we kind of like this. We think it is applicable to healthcare. Where do we go next? He said, well, the next place you need to go is go see it in Japan at Toyota. So in 2002, the 24-member executive team, traveled to Toyota to see the Toyota production system, a 2-week journey. And, you know, instead of it being this great cultural, it was a great cultural visit to Japan, but it was days and days in the factory, it was days and days in the museums, looking at Toyota, the history of Toyota, and trying to start to learn the method by which they improved their process. So here's just an example. We would go to Toyota, and we would go to Toyota suppliers or Toyota companies that they were working with, and we would be put into the process improvement role. So there's our CEO, Gary Kaplan, right? Yeah. An internist, might be your internist. Andrew Jacobs, the chief medical officer, also a medical oncologist, and Lucy Glenn's the chief of radiology at Virginia Mason. And they're watching an air conditioners being built at Hitachi. And they're writing things down, and they're making observations, and they've been asked to increase the production of air conditioners by decreasing the waste in the work of the workers that are doing the manufacturing. These doctors. But this was the first step. It was the first step in really saying, what does this methodology have? This method of really looking at work, studying the process, looking for waste, and then having methods to improve it. So at the end of this week, they have to report out, and they actually did. They were able to find seconds of time and reorganize where screwdrivers and things were for the worker to realign the manufacturer so they could actually get the production that needed to be done. And at the end of this 2-week journey, the 24 executive team came out and said, we see it. This is the method that improves all process. It's not limited to healthcare. If we adopt this method as rigorous as Toyota has, it's really built over Deming's model, that we can be the Toyota of healthcare. We will be the Virginia Mason production system, which will be the Toyota production system of healthcare. And they're really excited about that. Okay? 24 executive leaders really excited about that. And the problem is there's over 5,000 of us back at Virginia Mason getting this email saying that we are seeing the light, the savior of our company is the Virginia Mason production system, and this is what we're going to adopt going forward. It didn't fly so well, the email, as you we thought they were kind of crazy. We didn't really know what was going on because they had seen something. They had had this see-feel experience, the experience that really had cut on the machine. As part of this, before they left, all 24 executive leaders sat down with them and they said, who is going on this journey with us? Who wants to go on this journey? 2 leaders said, no, I'm not going on the journey. And so they left. They left the organization when they came back. The rest, we said, if you're on this journey with me, you have to be committed to learning this methodology, which means you have to become certified. You have to take the next year in learning the Toyota production system methods, and you're going to have to manage your operations with those tools, and you're going to have to lead improvement events throughout the organization. And that's going to be a requirement of being a leader here. So there was a commitment that you had to make. So when he came back, people said, well, you know, we made that commitment. It was nice in Japan. We don't really have to follow through. At the end of the year, there were 2 leaders that weren't certified. And Gary said, do you want to leave the organization, or are you going to get certified? So they got certified, but I think he really held people to the accountability of what it was going to be a leader in the organization. So this is what they were saying back home. Yeah, this is what everybody was saying. You know, we can't adopt Toyota methodology. We can't adopt this manufacturing methodology in healthcare. People are not cars. People were drawing little doodles of kind of riveting patients as they went down on this. This is what we were going to do. And then we had one really vocal surgeon saying, and this is ridiculous. We sent all that money, you know, it was like $500,000 to send all these things. All that money for them, and they want to adopt this. This is not going to work. But we have a way of changing people's minds, which is that we make a trip each year back to Japan. We take other leaders along the way to Toyota. So we took this surgeon, although everybody was really worried about taking this surgeon, but he was a leader. He was a chief of surgery. And he went through it, and certainly at the beginning was very skeptical, but he started to change. And when you come back from Japan, we have a professional staff meeting where you get to say your reflections of what you learned. So he gets up there, and the first thing he says, "People are not cars." I go, oh gosh, no, this is not good. This is not going to end well. He said, "People are not cars. But if we treated our patients as well as Toyota treats its cars, we'd have the best healthcare delivery system in the world." So it was, it's really a very powerful statement because it was really acknowledging both the power of the method and the fact that they were just in a distinctly different enterprise. We've started to move beyond that, and I would say this phraseology, "people are not cars," for about the first 5 years, you heard it. You go to Virginia Mason now, you never hear it by anybody. Anybody. It's gone. People realize this is not about sterilizing the patient experience. It's not about telling me exactly what to do. It's about fixing the processes which allow us to give the best patient care, to have the best patient experience along the way. So it's very interesting, but this is, if you ever adopt this, you're going to get this one, so be ready for it. It's coming. And so then we began our journey of learning the method. And we started learning the methods of lean. And how many of you know a little bit about lean or TQM or So, it starts out with lean is about really removing waste from the process. And we had to start seeing, because we've been embedded in healthcare processes and we've been embedded in educational processes, and sometimes the waste, we just accept it as part of the process. We no longer see it anymore. So we have senseis from Japan, and one of them is Sensei Nakao. Nakao is one of the last surviving members who's worked with Taiichi Ono, who was kind of considered the founder of the Toyota production system. Worked with him as one of his managers. And he came to Virginia Mason, and he was walking with Bob Mecklenburg. Bob Mecklenburg was one of the endocrinologists and was chief of medicine at the time, and he says, "Come over here." He goes, "What is this?" And he goes, it's the waiting room to the clinic." He goes, thinks a little bit, he goes, "And what happens in here?" He goes, "Well, the patients check in and they wait." "What are they waiting for?" "Well, they're usually waiting for me to finish the next patient so then I can come in." And then he looks up and he goes, "Aren't you ashamed?" Because for him, how could you even think of building a waiting room and having people wait when that's your customer and not fixing the process? That you would just build the waiting room instead of fix the process. And that really these types of challenges about, wow, we have waiting rooms everywhere. And he goes, "Yeah, I know. Why do you have them everywhere? Why do you make waiting the first part of the process?" Waiting is waste. It's waste of time. Nobody likes to wait. Why do you build it in as the first thing you want people to do when they get into your process flow? So it really started changing the way we started thinking. And we started learning about waste, and this is kind of that we actually could framework a process and think about waste in different categories. There was waste of time, and we had these big monuments called waiting rooms, and gosh, we have docs complaining, we don't have enough exam rooms, but they have the biggest waiting room. So the waiting is at the expense of the non-value-added activities at the expense of the value-added activity, which is seeing the patients. So, we started reframing, and for some of you who've been to some of the Virginia Mason clinics, you know that we've designed them now we have one, and Kirk has no waiting room. You walk in the space and you have to check in immediately. Some of our patients didn't like that. I'll just tell you a side story. I said, I don't like this new clinic. You're going to have that waiting room. And that was really nice for me when I got in. I said, "Oh," and the doc, Kim Pittenger, said, "Oh, you mean the influenza distribution center?" Suddenly he changed his thought about the waiting room. Maybe that's not where I want to be. But we had waste in all these areas: motion, arm movements, transportation, the things we move back and forth in processes. Inventory, sitting on a shelf was just sleeping money, as our senseis told us. Processes that we didn't need to have, things that we made or produced that nobody ever used, and we spent all this time producing things, often they might expire. So we had we had all of these wastes and systems, and we started to need to think about our processes in this way. The other great challenge that we had is that in healthcare, and I suspect in education, is that when we have an expansion of service, we think about, let's see, we had 5,000 square feet for 30 patients. If we're going to have 40, we're going to have to go to 7,500 feet. And we just kept thinking about expanding the room it took to do a wasteful process. And I said, no. Do it with half the space you have now, with half the time, with half the people. And thinking this made us focus on the process, not on the space. If we were challenged like this, the only way we could do it in half was to really look at the process and remove the waste in the current way we delivered any type of service. And I think this just provokes your thinking into a different direction. Ultimately, we adopted, as we said, the Virginia Mason production system, which had these tenets, which were things that we looked at from the Toyota method that were very relevant. The patient is always first. Toyota said the customer is always first, and we said that the patient will always be first in what we do. We need to focus along the way on quality and safety and build it into process. But that's got to be clear, and then we have to have all of our employees engaged every minute along the way in looking and inspecting for quality and safety. Employees have to be engaged in their work, and they have to be engaged in improvement activities, and we have to get the wisdom from them out into our improvement activities. Striving for high satisfaction, and we have to maintain ourselves economically successful so that we could reinvest in ourselves and reinvest in our community to carry on further improvement work. So, I have my own story, and for those of you who have read the book, it's the second chapter about what it means to be patient first, and it's called The Blue Yarn. The first improvement that I got involved in was in 2003, when we were redesigning our Cancer Institute. And we were going to change the way we delivered care for our patients who come in for cancer treatments. Our patients, and many probably know some, or you may have been a patient who was treated for cancer. You're tired, you're fatigued, you're worried, you're anxiety. The last thing you want is people wasting your time or going on long walks in the medical center. But as a physician, I really never knew the patient experience. I really didn't know it. I mean, I knew when they came into my clinic, and I knew when they left they would go get an infusion, which was in the infusion center below me, but I had a hard time seeing that experience from the patient. Until we did this improvement event and said, I want you to know what the current situation is for a patient, how long they walk. Each inch of this yarn represents 10 feet of walking. We followed your patients that come to see you, and they walk over 800 feet. And I said, how can they walk that far? My clinic's only like 100. Well, they have to walk to lab, and they have to walk back to radiology, then they walk up to see you. And this blue yarn, which represents the places, we didn't have enough space for it. We just kept winding it around on this cardboard thing. And I said, oh my God, that's the patient experience? We have to do better than that for the patient. And for me, that tool of understanding the patient experience, just even in their distance walking, started to make me very much attuned that I did not know. I assumed a lot, but I really didn't know about the patient experience and how it really motivated me to want to change that. Our cancer is eventually designed so that everybody came to the patient, not the patient went around the building. So there's a patient now, you walk 100 feet, you go into a spot, and you get all of your treatment, and the doctor and the nurse and the pharmacist, everybody comes to you, as opposed to you going in. But I think that's a critical, the critical point, I think, maybe in education is, how do you understand the learner's experience, the student's experience, the family's experience? How does the family support the learner if they make any experience as well, too? So, one of the ways that I talked about was looking at this yarn. The other thing was we started having abilities to map our patient's journey across the silos of care. So often, for instance, this is a journey, a tool called a value stream map about a patient getting a total joint replacement. And it starts in the clinic, But then, if you get told you need a total joint replacement and show up at peri-op or pre-op area at, usually 5 in the morning. Right?
Mhm.
And then you get there at 5 and they don't call you until 10. You say, why would I hear from 5? And then there's information missing along the way. Then you have your surgery, and then you have a recovery. And the information really didn't pass on along the way because we operated in these silos. We got to we started to develop this method, the method of Toyota and TQM is just look across these silos, break them down, and see the patient's journey as a problem. This really helped us see that we needed to be better communicators and we were communicating for the patients. So this is just as we look at it today, that the patient's journey is from home to clinic to hospital to back to home. And we have to be always cognizant of the patient experiences to get back to home and being always aware of how they're experiencing each part of our process along the way. In the last 4 years, we've said, patient questionnaires, we have something called Press Ganey about the experience of the patient. We get it back at the end of the month. You have a 93% satisfaction rate. Here were some comments by patients that were made in your clinic. And it's very hard to operate on those types of things. They're not real time enough. It isn't really feedback that we can change process with. So we began to think about what could we develop as a tool that could help us understand the patient journey at every point along the way, because the patient experience can be critical. And how can we then engage the patient in our improvement activities? So we started looking at our processes and using words, emotional words, about how do you feel at this step? I feel okay, I feel depressed, I'm frustrated. And we started weighting these emotional words in the process, and we validated this tool, we call it experience-based design, which shows the emotional feelings of patients along the way in their journey in any of our healthcare processes. And if we have a lot of negative emotional words, we say we got to look at this experience and enlist the patient's help in doing improvement activity in that particular area. And this has really floored us. Just where we did not know where the patients were having these negative experiences of our process, because sometimes they didn't show up in patient surveys or didn't show up in the Press Ganey scores. This was really getting to experiential data about the patient along the way. So pursuing the perfect patient experience starts to have to start developing tools to understand the patient experience that don't exist.
Mm.
Do you have all the tools to understand the student's experience right now? Are they robust enough? Do they inform you enough? Can they lead to improvement and change? Those are the things I think I start thinking about when I think about industries, going across industries. Do you have enough information about it? This is the other thing we learned along the way. Every assumption we made that we knew what the patient wanted was always wrong. Almost by a 180. I'm sure patients like this. No, they don't. Actually, when we look at they like totally the opposite. They want information delivered this way on pieces. No, they hate information delivered on pieces of paper. They want another way of learning or hearing about it. We've learned that there's a lot of variation in patients. And now we are really going to the next step, was that we can't give them the same experience, the same learning. I'm sure you have all learned this about there's no learning experience that fits all learners. But can we know enough about the patient to know what learning experience is best going to get them, so we can get away from he's non-compliant. There's no support in the home for him. He doesn't care about his health. Into understanding what is it that they need to know more. What is the situation that we can actually change that can take non-compliance to compliance? And stop labeling and start understanding what the issues are. But this is also a real important issue in lean and Deming. It's always asking why. Don't ever be accepted that you know the answer until you go see and ask why, and go deeper and deeper into the root causes of the problem, as opposed to stopping too superficial where you don't make a difference. For us, we have so many non-compliant hypertensives, right? They don't take their meds, they don't take it. And then we find out it's actually when they come into the clinic, we don't wait long enough for them to be sitting down before we check their blood pressure.
Mhm.
So all the non-compliant patients are really our fault because we did the wrong quality method to measure the blood pressure in the clinic in the first place. So we have to continually learn. As I said, it's a continually learning journey in applying our proven technology. The journey for quality and safety is really one that we've learned from Toyota, how Toyota builds in quality along the way. This is a Prius manufacturing line in Toyota, and here are workers working aside by the car, and if they see a defect in that car, they will pull this cord, and there will be an immediate response by the supervisor. The line will slow down, and a response to the supervisor. And the supervisor will come over, and in healthcare, they berate you. But in Toyota, they say, thank you for finding the defect before it reaches the customer. Okay, then they work on it. If they can't fix it before it reaches the next line along the way, they pull it again, and it stops the entire assembly. Do not pass something defective to the next worker in the process. This is how they get great quality. They don't pass defects or known defects along the way. Every worker is an inspector of the process. Every inspector has ability to stop the line. When you do that, and when you stop the line, you have to stop and fix the problem, and then you do your root cause analysis. Why did it occur in the first place? How do I put that as a corrective action plan? Do this enough, continually, you start to develop high-quality systems because you're continually improving them. But you're using the diligence of the worker and a cultural ability that nobody can accept a defect in the process. So we wanted this. And so we developed something called our Patient Safety Alert System, which was modeled after this, which is that any worker at Virginia Mason can call an alert, a patient safety alert, if they see something that might be potentially harmful to a patient at any time. It didn't matter what it was. And here's, I'm just going to give you our journey along the way. We put the process in around 2004, and we had some. And then here you can see we've had a kind of gradual increase along the way. Any thoughts as to what's happening in the organization? If you were to see that?
More people taking responsibility.
More people taking responsibility. People are looking closer.
It's a higher degree of expectation.
Higher degree of expectation.
Know what to look for.
They know what to look for, what to inspect. Cultural issues. Nobody's being yelled at. When they call something out, they're actually being thanked. Here's where we start putting in a reward system. The best, we call it our Good Catch Award. That little safety net. It's the person who found a safety, who called in a PSA that had the biggest impact on patient safety. Now they're lauded. Everybody comes up. They get a little money and some handshake from the CEO and a picture on the front page of our screen next to the strategic plan. So there's a journey here of engaging the worker, right? Everybody has to be involved in transformation. You'll see that as part of the 14th step of Deming. And that everybody has a role. And then as you move culture, you can put the great system in, but you got to change culture and you have to make it real. Our board, if this quality goes all the way up to the board level, our board members must, if we have serious events, they must agree that we put in a corrective action plan that will prevent it from happening again. They turn down 1 in 10 and tell us we have to go back and do some more work at the root cause level. So they have a real strong commitment to safety. So here's just one of the things, just as we talk about cultural journey, this is an anesthesiology table. I don't want to, if I'm scaring anybody about healthcare, just tell me, because sometimes they tell me stories.
That way.
Yeah, I tell these stories in healthcare, and I go like, it's great for the healthcare audience, but I think it's, everybody goes, really? Is that what happened? But this is a back tray, and what would you say the concern is if I were to suddenly come in and have to relieve the person who's doing this procedure, monitoring the anesthesia of a patient in surgery?
What do you pick up?
What do you pick up?
Yeah.
Right. It's a little. But this was very typical, and most people would say, this is my organized system. I said, how do you know what to do? Oh, I know exactly what it is. Right? But I don't. I might have to relieve you right away. So the journey was to get people to have this very standard, what we call shadow board, with standard syringes labeled in the right location, so everybody was the same. Of course, this was easy, right? Bunch of anesthesia. It took a year. So Bob Kaplan, our chief of anesthesiology, was involved in this, and it was one by one almost trying to convince anesthesiologists why this might be a safer. Now nobody will ever go back, but along the way, when you're changing mindsets, it's a journey. The other big, I think, change for us was instituting standard work, that when we found a best way, that we designed what that best way was and then trained our people to do that. There's a lot of pushback in standards. Some people love standards. Our frontline staff loved it because now they knew what was expected of them and they could do a good job. Before, everybody expected something different of them and they had to remember 8 or 9 ways to do something to please a particular individual as opposed to having all kind of process. So the methods of training too are along the way are with our training within has been to move more towards training with the individual or on the job training than to have rote member work. Engaging employees along the way, this has been very critical for us. How we engaged our employees in the work. Really, we engage our employees in all ways of improvement activities, either through submitting, through participating on 5-day improvement events, or submitting on 2-day events. We also have an educational program which employs for learning about this improvement methodology that all employees get intro and any employee can drop into our general training classes. And then there's requirements along the way. If you're a supervisor, you must have leader training that allows you to lead 2-day improvement events. If you're an executive or administrative director, you have to be certified, 5-day improvement events. And then I'm a fellow, which is, we're really, for future leaders that really want to push the organization in thinking how more deeply to apply this methodology into healthcare. Remove fear. I think that was a really interesting thing that Deming said. How do we take fear away from the worker? So what do we fear? This was, we have that patient safety alert system, but here's a question we asked in our culture survey. Do you feel free to speak up if something negative happens to a patient? Would you speak up? So, is this good?
They would speak up. 81% would speak up?
Yeah.
That's better than 76%.
It's better than 76, but
It's still not.
But what about the other
20%?
1 in 5 aren't speaking up. So what is this barrier? What is our
That's just your
fear?
gun in school.
Is it everybody? No, if this will always be the case that some people won't speak up, or is there some barrier that's holding people from speaking up, cultural or institutional, that we could start to address?
Do you know the distribution of what that 20% represents?
I don't have it on this. I don't know it, but I think I've been asked, and I think it's really which group is it a subpopulation that might help you understand a little bit about which group you need to target. Our organization decided to take that on and say, based on some information from Lucian Leap, who is a person who's really about safety and quality and respect, said it's all about respect in your organization and how can you be more respectful to each other as team players. So we took all 5,000 employees through a respect for people training, including little, we acted out, we had actors act out situations and then we would stop and comment about was it respectful or not, and then reacted out with respectful behaviors. And then we had to sign up for one of these 10 behaviors that we wanted to change amongst ourselves. Now, we don't know if this has been successful, and we're still kind of carrying it out, but I think it's along the way. What do you do differently when you see that there's still people not reporting? Are you obligated to try to change your culture? Being successful for us, this was a journey. This is where we lost money. this is, 5 years into the journey, or 3 years into the journey, we're still not much better. Where you see the black bars is where we've exceeded our stretch margins, and so we were able to share the profits with our frontline staff. And that really has been very powerful for them, because some of those have not been in the best economic years overall, but it's really enlist them about why to participate in improvement activities. The other, here everybody goes, well, you're going back down this way, right? It's kind of a bell shape. We have some investments in a brand new hospital that we're building that's totally designed over lean facility, which is very different than our old hospital that we're paying back. But I will say the healthcare, some of the Affordable Care Act is affecting us as well too, as far as reimbursement. So we have further work to do. Jim mentioned that we received an award as one of the 2 best hospitals in the nation by an outside agency called Leapfrog, Hospital of the Decade, for 10 years of really delivering high quality with good resource utilization. Here's resource, the better stewards of resource, the higher you are. Here's Virginia Mason. Here's other blue diamonds or other hospitals. The brown dots are hospitals in the U.S. that were evaluated. The lean proposition, and I would say the proposition in any industry with improved methodologies, can you deliver high quality with the least amount of resource? Because you don't want to cut resource and watch quality drop. If you're going to be efficient, is that you're maintaining high levels of quality as you take waste out of your process, the non-value added activities that you do. Very critical for us is really starting with our strategic plan and aligning all of our priorities along the way. Every department and every operational area must manage with this methodology, the methodology of Toyota. They must use value stream maps and have improvement plans so that everybody in the organization is using the same methodology and focusing our resources about what we want, what we believe. And this is our alignment that was critical for us. Leaders, we have regular leader stand-up meetings which say what is the improvement work that we're doing in the organization, where do we stand. We have a regular meeting every Tuesday in our organization led by our CEO, Gary Kaplan. And we've embarked that every leader must have standard work. If we're going to ask our employees to have standard work in doing, every leader must have standard work that they do in order to really model to the behaviors that we're expecting of our group as well too. If I were to, we have 2 more slides, and so I just want to leave you with one thing. As we think about the bigger area about how do you transform an industry and organization, and we look back at ourselves, what were key? One, we needed urgency. That was kind of financial and quality driven. We needed committed leaders that understood the method, and that really started with our Japan trip and training and requirement of training. A shared vision was really important with our strategic plan. Aligning expectations was a lot about our compact work, that we all knew what we were there for and what the expectations we should have for each other. We had to really train leaders, and we didn't talk a lot about this, about being really great change leaders and understanding the human component of change and how to lead your people through change. We use a lot of John Cotter's model called the heart of change for this particular area. And then for us, a singular improvement method, a method that we're going to train and use for everything we do throughout the organization. As we kind of go back, and as I go to organizations that I work with, this is what we use as our framework. Do we have these in place to be successful? So this is the journey in medicine. I guess you could think about what's the journey in education along the way, from provider to patient. Waiting is good, waiting is bad. It's about retrospective quality. No, we have to be out there the leaders have to be out watching the process, understanding it firsthand, and having real-time methods like a patient safety alert system to improve quality. So this is my last slide, and I think that we're in a time of change, and I'm sure healthcare is in a time of change. I'm sure education's in a time of change. So we're going to have to learn a different way of doing things. And we can borrow it from another industry, but I think if we hold on to what we're doing, and as Jim said, if we don't have a plan, we're going to be the dinosaurs of the past because the world is going to change with that. So thank you. It's been a good episode.